So we're a little past the halfway point here in 2025. We're in late August. We've got July's data, and you're probably clicking on this video because you're wondering what the heck is going on here in Winnipeg's real estate market. And if you haven't heard, well, it's been going on quite a tear here. There's been lots of activity, lots of things happening here. But looking at this past month's data, there's signs of it cracking. They're starting to see signs of it declining. And so we're going to get into all of that here. And then later on, we're going to talk about what I think buyers and sellers should do in this market, and then a few extra tidbits along the way. So without further ado, let's get into the data here. And starting off, I wanted to just show a bird's eye view, a big picture of what's going on here in the province versus Canada versus Winnipeg itself. And so we have the HPI home price index, home prices, Winnipeg, Manitoba, and Calgary. And so as you can see at the top here, the red dot here is Canada. And then that's going at 672,000. So that's the HPI home price index across Canada, what they esteem a house is worth. And we have Manitoba, which is $390,000. And then Winnipeg sitting at $386,000. And so if you look at last year, Winnipeg actually has been up just about 7%. And so there's been some substantial growth. A lot of the prairie provinces have seen some substantial growth over the last year. But moving on to the all residential home prices. So this is everything. This is detached homes, attached homes, and condos. And just to explain this a little bit more, we're going to get a bird's eye view picture of what's going on here. And then a little later in the video, we're going to talk about specific detached, attached, and condos. So don't worry, we're going to get into that data there as well. But looking here at the home prices, as you can see in January here, seeing a bit of an incline. And then around May and June, we're starting to see a decline here in the all residential prices. And so as you can see here, we've had from the previous month, 1.6% increase, but then June, July, both seeing 1.5% decreases, where the average home prices here across all residential is $378,846. Now moving on to the total sales that have been happening here. As you can see, January, there wasn't that many, but that's kind of typical, like seasonal wise. We tend to see less sales activity around those types of months. But as you can see here, sales have just skyrocketed over the past couple months. And now again, we're starting to see a decline. Similar to this, the home sale prices, that they're starting to see a slight decline. Now what's going to happen the rest of the year? I'm not too sure. Obviously, we're going to wait to see what the data says, but I imagine it'll continue a trend downwards. And so as you can see in the sales here, basically a big drop in sales, almost 8% drop in sales here. Again, this is all residential properties here. And then moving on to total inventory. And so this is always the interesting one. As prices decrease, as sales decrease, inventory tends to increase. Obviously, with the increase that happens naturally when we're talking about the summer months, we're also seeing an all-time high, essentially. If you go look at any of the board says and other realtors locally here say, we are at an all-time high for inventory. And so when we compare it, we can see that over the last May, June, July, there's been, basically growth of inventory, whereas the sales and prices have started to decline here. And so then MOI is months of inventory. So this is just a little stat, how many months, if there was no new inventory, and based on how many sales we have, this is how much months of supply we had. So if there's nothing, basically all the supply would be gone in just over a month, which is pretty crazy to say, especially when you compare it to other major cities here in Canada. And now that we've gone over all the bird's eye view data of what's happening here in Winnipeg, I want to draw our attention to the detached market here, specifically the residential detached market here in Winnipeg. And again, looking at the home price trending here, it's gone up in January, February, March, April, May, June, slight incline. And this is the sector where we're starting to see cracks. And so residential prices are starting to decline here. And so as we can see down here in the data here, May, June, we've both seen increases. July, seen almost a 5% decrease. Then we look at the sales. Sales have also decreased. Active listings, they've kind of hovered around the same. There was a bit decrease in June, but now we're back to having higher active listings here in the detached sector. And then we have the sales to active listing ratio at the bottom here. And so as you can see in May, we had 102%. When you compare it to the national average, where I think it's about 55% right now, but even like other major cities, it's insane that there's so many solds are happening per active listings. It's kind of nuts. But the trend here, that's what we're trying to see here, is that it's starting to taper off. As you can see, 102, 108. Now it's at 93. And so it'd be interesting to see how much, as we get basically August data, what happens here exactly. Now we're moving on to the residential attached properties. Majority of these are going to be townhomes or townhome-like properties. And when we look back over the year, we're seeing similar trends happening here when we compare it to the detached market, where prices have pretty much increased all the way since May. Now, when we come to June and July, there seems to be a bit of a difference here where June there was a big decrease, and then July there was a bit of a rebound per se. Now, the question is, are we holding steady, or are we going to be seeing more decline here happening in the next months? It's hard to say, but when we look at the data over the past 3 months, sales have decreased, active listings have increased. And so naturally, when you have those two things happen, prices should go down. And then we have the sales to active listings ratio, which isn't as insane as the detached market, but it's nearly half that, 64%, 44%, 42%. So actually we're seeing, again, less sales, more actives, prices tend to go downwards. And now we're moving on to the condo and apartment segment. And to no surprise, when we look at the data here, or look at the graph, we've seen January to May, same sort of increase across the board when we look at all segments. And now, again, same with all the other segments, May, June, July, there seems to be a tipping off effect where prices are starting to level off, if not decline. We've seen that most drastically in the detached market. And there was a slight rebound in the attached market. And here it seems to be leveling off a slight decline. Here we got 0.6% decrease from last month, brings us to $286,929. Sales have maintained somewhat the same. Active listings have retained. They've it's gone up and then gone down a little bit. So I would say it's remained somewhat similar. And then the sales to active listings ratio. So there is still people out there buying these types of homes. Now I want to briefly touch on what the board here is saying as well. MLS sales and average price gains in July outpace market performance in recent years. So MLS sales and average price gains. Sales, yeah, I guess on a average across the board, sales have gone up for sure. Average price gains, depending what segment you're talking about here, right? As we've seen in the data here, it's not so much the case. And I'm just gonna look at this graph here. As you can see, back in 2016 all the way to 2025, these sales that have happened here in Winnipeg. And again, no surprise, ever since COVID there, 2020, things have gone decline, but now we're starting to see quite a massive increase in sales. How far is it going to go? Nobody knows. But just a little blurb here from the board. July's average prices for residential detached homes and condominiums continue to trend the highest monthly average prices on record. Well, that's definitely true. 2025, 2026, president of the Winnipeg Board, Real Estate Board, MLS sales continue the trend of increase over the past year. Well, when you factor it that way, yes, they have increased over the past year. Over last year, but the data is kind of saying otherwise. But July's performance also rose above the 5-year average. All MLS top dollar volume was the highest July figure on record, while all MLS sales were the third highest July on record. And so this segment here is talking about all of the stuff. I'm specifically just talking about Winnipeg and essentially the attached, detached, and condominium market. We've gone over a lot of information here, but what does this actually mean to you? So this is a segment where I want to just point out some things, depending if you're buying or if you're selling, or you're just wanting some opinions on what's happening here in the market. And so if you're buying in 2025, this segment's for you. And right now, listings are at an all-time high. So you do have more choices, but sales are there too, right? So you can't forget that. There's lots of listings, but there's also lots of sales that have been happening. The condo and attached prices are holding, but for how long? So if you're looking into this segment, it's like, I always just think, well, am I going to buy right now? That's the question you got to ask yourself. Will I buy, or do I need to buy right now? And I would lean towards, if you can wait, because you're basically buying at an all-time high here. So unless you have to, for whatever reason, like you got a job transfer, like, look, Rich, I got to move to Winnipeg. Then do it. Like, I'm not going to stop you and say, hey, but maybe your rent. I don't know. Maybe that market there is You can rent while you, hold out for the prices to come down a little bit more. Just things you got to think about. And the detached prices are starting to come down. We've seen that in the data. It is starting to come down. So if you're thinking about buying a detached property, kind of similar to the condos and attached prices, you might want to wait. And if you can wait till like when seasonally it's the best time to buy, which is wintertime, which Winnipeg, it's got its nickname for a reason. Nobody wants to move during that time. And so do with that with what you will. But I truly believe that prices are going to start coming down here. And that's kind of my next point there. Prices will trend downwards. And then lastly here, it's still important to get pre-approved. Even though, in my opinion, prices are going to start trending downwards, it's still important to get pre-approved because the last thing you want to do is go look at properties and then realize, oh, wait, I can't afford this. Or as we've seen there, that like inventory doesn't stay in the market that long here. So it's good to get all your ducks in a row so that when you're out looking at properties, you can confidently put an offer on a property and know that, hey, nothing's going to get in the way unless the home inspection is no good. That's a beautiful position to be in. So make sure you do that. And then if you're selling in 2025, I got some words of thoughts or advice I would say to you is that condo and prices, similar to the other one, is that condo and attached prices are holding for now. And so if you're in one of those positions and you need to sell, it may not be a bad time to sell, honestly, because you're at an all-time high. Prices seem to be somewhat holding, but as we get into the fall, the winter, that could definitely change. And the detached pricings are starting to come down. Again, it's kind of a repeat, but I'm talking to you as a seller. That if you're thinking you're going to get last month's prices, well, the market's at this point and the market's starting to go this way, you may want to think twice about that strategy. But it still is in favor of sellers, right? I would agree that if you look at how many actives to sales that happen in the detached market, it's still at 93%. Like most of the homes are selling. But it's just like, how long is that going to happen for? But again, we'll have to wait till next month's data comes out. And then listings are high and sales are starting to creep downwards. We've seen that across the board. Listings are increasing, sales are decreasing. Prices in the detached market have started to come down, but the prices in the attached and condo markets have remained somewhat steady, right? There is a slight decline there. So that's why I say it lightly. So you need to price your home sharp is what I'm just trying to say here. We're on the crest here. We're looking over the cliff here and we're looking downwards, at least in my opinion. So you need to price your home sharp so you're not one of those people that just sits on the market for months and wonder, why did I even bother to put my house on the market in the first place? And on a slightly different note, I want to show you this tool that I've been using for quite some time. It's a home evaluation tool that blows me away every time I use it, like how accurate it is. And so here it is. What's my home worth? Zero conversation home evaluation, meaning you put your information in, you don't got to wait a couple days for some realtor to get back to you. It's literally in a matter of seconds. You hit send, within like 5 seconds, this thing gets back to you with a fairly accurate price of what the property or what they think the property's worth. It takes the actives, it takes the solds, a little bit of AI stuff in there as well. So go try it out. Give me your feedback on it. Honestly, I'm always curious on what people think of this tool as well. Now, full disclosure, I will be getting your information, and don't worry, I'm not here to like push you to sell or push you to do something. I'm just here to see if you need any help. And if you don't, I'm more than happy to go on my way. So make sure you check out that tool. Now, another thing that I want to be fully transparent on is that I don't live in Winnipeg. I do market updates across Canada. It's a bit of a passion of mine. I'm always curious on like what's happening in these major cities. So I do analysis on them just like this video here. But if you are thinking about buying or selling or doing something in Winnipeg and you need some reliable, trustworthy realtors, I have a great connection across Canada here that I'm more than happy to share with. Or if you just want some thoughts or opinions or people to bounce some ideas off of, I'm more than happy to, take a call or even just talk to you via email or text or whatever. Feel free to reach out. And if you want to stay up to date with what's happening here in Winnipeg and you like this style of report, feel free to hit the like and subscribe button so that the algorithm, does its stuff and sends you more of my videos. But as always, I appreciate you watching and I'll see you in the next one.